16,000 years ago, the most effective fishing technology on Earth was a sharpened stick, and the fish had a genuine chance of winning. That is still true in some parts of the world. In others, a single vessel freezes 4,000 tons without ever coming back to port. The fish did not change. We did, and we did it faster than anything in the ocean could keep up with. The oldest evidence of human fishing is not a hook or a net or a boat. It is a shellfish midden, a pile of discarded shells left behind by people who walked along a shoreline, reached into rock pools, and pulled out what they found. Sites like this in South Africa date to at least 164,000 years ago, which makes seafood collection older than many of the things we think of as definitively human. Older than pottery. Older than evidence of cooking with fire at some sites. A person, a rock pool, something living in it, and a hand reaching in. Zero technology. Zero bycatch. The method has a perfect ecological record because it cannot take more than it can carry, and it cannot reach anything that does not live at arm's length. That is the baseline. Everything after this is an improvement on it, and each improvement has a cost that does not show up until much later. Spearfishing enters the record around 16,000 years ago, and it has not fundamentally changed since. A sharpened point, a body in the water, and a fish that can see you coming. The entire transaction is visible and individual. One person, one fish, one decision on both sides about whether this is worth the risk. The fish has a genuine chance of winning, and experienced spearfishers will tell you that a large fish often does. The method selects for skill because it has to. You cannot take what you cannot hit, and you cannot hit what you cannot find, and finding requires understanding the animal well enough to know where it will be. There is something in spearfishing that disappears from every subsequent method on this list. A direct relationship between the person and the specific animal. It does not last. The hook changes the equation in a way that is easy to underestimate. A baited hook or a lure is the first tool in the history of fishing that does the hunting for you. You stop going to the fish and the fish comes to you, drawn by something it has mistaken for food. Deception enters. The angler is not faster than the fish or more powerful than the fish. The angler is smarter than the fish, which is a different kind of advantage. A rod and line can be left unattended. It works at depths a spearfisher cannot reach. It operates in the dark. It also catches one fish at a time, which means there is still a direct relationship between effort and result. The hook is personal fishing. What follows is not. The fish trap and the weir are the first methods that work while you sleep. A pot set on the seafloor in the evening holds whatever entered it by morning. A weir, a barrier of stakes or stones built across a tidal channel, guides whole populations of fish into an enclosure as the tide recedes, with no further action required from the person who built it. Passive capture. The fisherman goes home and the catching continues. The method requires no skill in the moment of capture because the moment of capture happens without anyone present. It also begins, in a small way, to remove the selectivity that spearfishing demanded. A trap catches what enters it. A weir catches what swims into it. The fisher is no longer choosing an individual animal. The architecture is choosing a population. The net takes that shift and makes it absolute. A cast net thrown over a school of fish does not distinguish between species, size, age, or condition. A gill net set across a current catches every animal large enough to push its head through the mesh and small enough to get stuck there. These are not tools for targeting a fish. They are tools for targeting a volume of water and taking everything in it above a certain size. Drift gill nets at their largest exceed 100 kilometers in length. They hang in the open ocean like an invisible wall, and anything that swims through them, tuna, swordfish, sharks, dolphins, sea turtles, seabirds diving from above, is caught. The UN banned gill nets over 2.5 kilometers on the high seas in 1992, which means that before 1992 this was considered an acceptable way to fish an ocean. The net does not choose what it catches. Nothing in its design could. Longlining scales the hook to the same logic. A single long line runs between 50 and 100 kilometers with a main line, branch lines, and somewhere between hundreds and 15,000 individual baited hooks hanging at intervals along its length. It targets tuna, swordfish, and halibut, and it catches everything else as well. Sea turtles take the bait at depth and drown because they cannot surface to breathe. Long lines operating in the Southern Ocean hook over 100,000 seabirds every year. The majority of them albatrosses, birds with a wingspan of up to 3.5 meters, a lifespan of up to 70 years, and a breeding rate of one chick every 2 years, which means a population cannot absorb losses at anything like the rate longlining produces them. The hook that once caught one fish now runs for 100 kilometers through open water, and everything it touches is a decision nobody made. Here is where the story changes. Everything on the ladder so far is a version of the same thing. A smarter, faster, larger way to find and take fish. The tools got better and the catches got bigger, but the underlying idea stayed the same. A person trying to outwit an animal in its own environment. There was cleverness in it, even at industrial scale. The logic held together. The next rung has different logic. In parts of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, reefs that were once among the most biodiverse marine environments on the planet are now silent. The coral is rubble. The fish are gone. There are no nets, no hooks, no lines. What ended those reefs was a method so disproportionate to its catch that the only way to understand it is through what it leaves behind. A crater of broken coral in water that used to hold hundreds of species, and a bucket of fish. Illegal across most of the world, and still widespread across parts of Southeast Asia, East Africa, and the Pacific, this method produces a reef aftermath that takes decades to recover from. If the rubble is stable enough for larvae to settle on at all, which it often is not, a single event kills everything in the radius, most of it sinking uncollected to the bottom. The catch is whoever floated. The loss is the entire ecosystem. The silent reef is the point. There is nothing left to describe. A different kind of damage moves invisibly through the water. Since the 1960s, over 1 million kilograms of cyanide have been used on the reefs of the Philippines alone. The target animals survive the exposure. That is the point. They are wanted alive, for aquarium tanks and for the live reef food fish trade, where a living fish commands a price a dead one cannot. The reef does not survive. Coral mortality after cyanide exposure runs as high as 80% in affected areas. The fish in the tank lives. The reef it came from is white. The global ornamental fish trade is worth somewhere between $200 million and $750 million annually. The live reef food fish trade, grouper, wrasse, and humphead parrotfish served live in restaurants across East and Southeast Asia, is worth over $1 billion. The clownfish in a domestic aquarium, the grouper served live at a table in Hong Kong, may have come from a method that killed everything around the animal when it was taken. The target lives, and the habitat dies. It is the only fishing method in human history where the ecological cost is paid entirely by something that was not being fished. Back in open water, the scale shifts again. A purse seine net works like a drawstring bag drawn around an entire school of fish. The net encircles the school at the surface. A line running through rings at the bottom is pulled tight to close it underneath. And what was a living population of fish swimming in open ocean becomes a dense mass in a container that is then hauled aboard. The largest tuna seiners can take 4,000 tons in a single trip. Most average between 1,000 and 1,500. The nets themselves run over 2,000 meters long and 200 meters deep. A wall of mesh that folds around a school before the school knows it is there. 2/3 of the world's tropical tuna catch comes from purse seining. A single set of the net can remove an entire local population of a species in one operation. The method does not take fish from a school. It takes the school. The seafloor offers a different problem and a different solution. Bottom trawling drags weighted nets across the ocean floor. The doors that hold the net open weigh several tons each and score tracks into the sediment as they go. The net itself flattens everything in its path. Coral structures that took centuries to grow, sponge beds, tube worm colonies, the physical complexity that provides habitat for juvenile fish, the architectural foundation of the entire benthic ecosystem. 150 million acres of seafloor are destroyed this way every year, more habitat destruction than any other single human activity on Earth. And it happens in water nobody is watching, producing no images, generating no footage. A trawled area of seafloor can take between 5 and 20 years to show partial recovery, and recovery to original complexity takes considerably longer than that, if the substrate is still intact enough to support it. Some areas have been trawled repeatedly for decades. What is left is not a damaged reef, it is sediment. And at the top of the ladder, the ship does not come back to port. A modern super trawler operates a net large enough to swallow 13 jumbo jets simultaneously. It catches, processes, and freezes at sea, running for weeks or months without returning to shore. The fish moves from ocean to frozen block without ever passing through a harbor. The vessel is not a fishing boat in any sense that connects to the person standing in a rock pool 164,000 years ago. It is a factory that happens to move. Every method on this list was a better answer to the same question. How do we take more? The sharpened stick became the spear. The spear became the hook. The hook became the net. The net became the long line, then the trawl, then the purse seine, then the factory ship that never needs to come home. 164,000 years of accumulated human cleverness pointed in a single direction. In all of that time, across every culture that ever fished, nobody built a tool for the opposite question. How do we leave enough? The fish never got better at surviving what we invented. We just got better at not needing them to.